Lock down Sector Gamma.
Through the night. Red lights flashed.
We have a
across the
breach
gray
on level
walls
4.
as correctional
All
officers
units
ran
respond.
from every
They're
direction.
in Block C.
Steel
Lock it
doors
down now.
slammed shut.
All
Searchlights
units, we have a
swept
breach in
over
cell
empty
block
prison
C.
yards.
I repeat,
Dogs
breach in
barked
cell
so
block
loudly
C.
4 is
that
secure.
people living miles
Moving
away
to the main
later
block.
said they heard them. Someone
Roger
had
that.
escaped. But
K9
that
are
was not the
proceeding to the
part
gate.
that shocked everyone. The real shock came when investigators discovered the escape tunnel. The tunnel did not begin under a prison
They had been
cell.
digging for months.
It did not start inside
driven
a storage
by the
room.
desperate hope of
It did
freedom
not even connect
that lay
to the prison
just
where
beyond
anyone
the darkness.
expected. The tunnel had fooled everyone. For months, maybe even years, it had been hiding beneath the prison without
your
a
lights
single
steady.
officer finding it. Cameras
Did you hear
had
that
watched
echo?
the wrong
Yeah,
places.
sounded metallic.
Guards had searched the wrong buildings.
Checking Sector 4.
Every security check had missed the one secret buried deep under their feet. And when detectives finally crawled inside the tunnel, they found something that made every person stop talking. Fresh footprints. Someone else had just used it.
Warning, officer.
The officers
Warden.
looked at each other in
Keep up the
complete
good work.
silence. If another person had escaped only minutes earlier, where were they now? That question would change everything. 6 months earlier, the prison looked like one of the safest places in America. Blackstone State Penitentiary sat far from any town. Thick fences wrapped around the buildings like giant metal webs. Tall guard towers watched every corner. Cameras covered almost every hallway. Huge steel gates separated each part of the prison. Most people believed nobody could ever escape from Blackstone. Warden Michael Harris believed it too. Every morning before sunrise, he walked the same path through the prison. He greeted officers by name. He checked security reports. He inspected locks, cameras, and fences. He often told new employees the same thing. If someone escapes from here, it will not happen because of luck. It will happen because someone stopped paying attention. His officers respected him because he demanded discipline from everyone, including himself. Among the hundreds of inmates was Daniel Brooks. Daniel was 38 years old. He almost never caused trouble. He never shouted. He never fought. He never broke prison rules. To many officers, Daniel seemed like the perfect prisoner. He worked quietly in the prison library, organizing old books and helping other inmates find reading materials. Officer Ryan Cooper often joked that Daniel probably knew every book on every shelf. Daniel would simply smile and continue working. No one realized that while everyone watched the loud prisoners, the quiet man was paying attention to everything. He noticed which officers changed shifts late. He counted how many seconds each security door stayed open. He memorized cleaning schedules. He watched repair crews. He listened when maintenance workers complained about broken pipes beneath one of the oldest buildings. Most people forgot those conversations minutes later. Daniel never forgot anything. Weeks passed. Nothing unusual happened. Rainstorms soaked the prison yard. Sunny afternoons came and went. The routine stayed exactly the same. Breakfast, head count, work assignments, lunch, exercise, dinner, lockdown. Day after day. The prison felt calm. Almost too calm. Meanwhile, Officer Cooper started noticing tiny things that did not seem important. Small piles of dirt appeared near an old maintenance hallway. A shovel disappeared but was later found in another building. One flashlight went missing from the maintenance room. A cracked concrete floor looked slightly different after each weekly inspection. Every problem had a simple explanation. At least, that was what everyone believed. One morning Cooper mentioned the dirt to another officer. "It probably washed in from the rain," his partner said. Cooper nodded. That sounded reasonable. Life inside the prison continued. The library remained quiet. Daniel continued stacking books. He smiled politely whenever officers walked past. No one searched his work area because there had never been any reason to. Far below the library floor, hidden behind layers of old concrete and forgotten pipes, something was slowly changing. The ground had begun to disappear. Not because of nature. Because someone was digging. Only a handful of inches each day. Just enough that nobody above could hear. Just enough that nobody would notice. Then, late one cold evening, Officer Cooper stayed after his shift to finish paperwork. As he walked through the nearly empty hallway, he heard a sound. Scratch. 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 It lasted only 3 seconds. Then it stopped. He froze. The hallway was completely silent again. He turned toward the library door. The lights inside were off. But beneath the floor, something, or someone, was still moving. Officer Ryan Cooper stood perfectly still. The hallway was silent again. He looked down at the cold concrete floor. For a moment, he thought he had imagined the scratching sound. It had been a long shift, and he was tired. The prison was old. Pipes rattled. Walls settled. Strange noises were common. Still, something did not feel right. He slowly walked toward the library door. The lights were off, but a small lamp near the front desk was still glowing. Books sat neatly on the shelves. Chairs were pushed under the tables. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Cooper unlocked the door and stepped inside. His flashlight swept across the room. Nothing. He checked behind the shelves. Nothing. He looked under the tables. Nothing. He even opened the supply closet. Empty. He let out a slow breath and laughed at himself. Just an old building, he whispered. He locked the library again and headed home. He never knew he had been standing only a few feet above the biggest secret Blackstone State Penitentiary had ever hidden. Deep beneath the floor, Daniel Brooks stayed completely still. He had heard Cooper's footsteps. He had heard the library door open. He had even seen tiny bits of dust fall from the ceiling as the officer walked across the room. Daniel held his breath. No one spoke. No one moved. Nearly 10 long minutes passed before he quietly picked up the small digging tool again. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. Pause. Every movement was slow and careful. The tunnel had taken many months to build. It was just tall enough for one person to crawl through. Wooden supports held up the dirt above. Small battery-powered lights gave off a weak glow. Plastic sheets covered piles of loose soil waiting to be moved. Daniel had planned everything. Every handful of dirt was hidden inside old maintenance bags. Small amounts disappeared little by little during work assignments. No large pile ever stayed in one place. That was why no one noticed. The next morning, Blackstone returned to its usual routine. The loudspeaker announced breakfast. Cell doors opened. Inmates lined up quietly. Officers counted everyone. Daniel stood in line like he always did. Officer Cooper watched the inmates pass. When Daniel reached him, Cooper smiled. "Morning, Brooks." "Morning, officer. You finish organizing those history books?" "Almost. You probably know that library better than I do." Daniel smiled politely. "I've had plenty of time to learn." Nothing about the conversation seemed strange. Nothing made Cooper suspicious. Later that afternoon, Warden Michael Harris walked through the prison with Chief of Security Laura Mitchell. Laura had worked in corrections for nearly 20 years. She trusted facts more than guesses. "The annual inspection team arrives next week," Harris said. "They'll check every building," Laura replied. "They always do. We'll pass like we always have." Neither of them knew how close they were to a disaster. That evening, a heavy rainstorm rolled across the prison. Thunder shook the buildings. Rain poured onto the prison yard. Water rushed into old drainage pipes beneath the prison. Deep underground, Daniel watched small drops of water fall from the tunnel ceiling. 1 drop became 5. 5 became 20. Mud began sliding across the narrow passage. Daniel's heart raced. Months of careful work could disappear in minutes. He grabbed extra wooden supports and pushed them against the tunnel walls. The dirt groaned. Tiny rocks rolled across the floor. Then, crack. A section of the tunnel ceiling collapsed. Daniel jumped backward as dirt crashed onto the ground where he had been kneeling only seconds before. Dust filled the narrow passage. He covered his mouth and waited. The tunnel held. Barely. He stared at the collapsed section. If he left it like this, the tunnel would never survive. If he tried to repair it, someone above might hear. He had no choice. He worked through the entire night. By sunrise, his hands were bleeding. His clothes were covered in dirt. But the tunnel stood once again. Above him, prison life continued as if nothing had happened. Later that day, Maintenance worker Ethan Walker reported something unusual. "I found a small crack in the library floor," he told Officer Cooper. "Probably from the storm," Cooper answered. "Maybe." Ethan looked uncertain. "It wasn't there yesterday." Cooper decided to take another look. The crack was thin, only a few inches long. Most people would have ignored it. But Cooper knelt beside it. He brushed away a little dust. Something caught his eye. Fresh dirt. Not gray concrete dust. Not old dirt tracked in on someone's boots. Fresh brown soil. He touched it with one finger. It was still damp. The library floor should not have fresh soil coming through solid concrete. He looked around the room. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Books, shelves, tables. Quiet. Still. That strange scratching sound returned to his mind. Cooper stood up and called Warden Harris. "I think we need to inspect beneath the library." The warden agreed. Within an hour, maintenance crews arrived with tools to lift part of the old concrete floor. Daniel watched from inside his cell as workers disappeared into the library. His face stayed calm. Inside, his heart pounded faster than ever. If they opened the wrong section of the floor, months of planning would be over. A loud crash echoed through the building as the first slab of concrete was lifted. Then one worker suddenly shouted, "Sir, you need to see this." Every officer nearby rushed toward the opening. No one was prepared for what waited beneath the floor. Every officer crowded around the opening in the library floor. Officer Ryan Cooper aimed his flashlight into the dark space below. For several long seconds, nobody said a word. There was no tunnel. Only old pipes, dusty concrete supports, and loose dirt. One maintenance worker climbed down for a closer look. He carefully searched every corner before calling back up. Nothing down here but old utility lines. The officers looked at one another. Cooper frowned. The dirt had to come from somewhere. Warden Michael Harris crossed his arms. "Keep looking." The workers searched for another hour. They found cracked pipes. They found broken concrete. They found years of dust. But they did not find a tunnel. The inspection ended. The floor was repaired before evening. Everyone returned to work. Everyone except Ryan Cooper. Something still bothered him. That night, he walked back to the library after his shift. He looked at every bookshelf. He measured the walls with his eyes. Then he noticed something he had never paid attention to before. One bookshelf was slightly farther from the wall than the others. Only a few inches. Most people would never notice. Cooper gently pushed the shelf. It did not move. He pulled one of the books. Nothing happened. He laughed at himself again. "I'm chasing ghosts," he said quietly. As he walked away, he never noticed Daniel Brooks watching him through the narrow window in the library door. Daniel waited until the hallway became empty. Then he smiled. The tunnel had not been under the library anymore. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel had changed everything. He knew inspections were becoming more frequent. He knew one small mistake could expose months of work. So he secretly dug a new branch that curved beneath an abandoned laundry room next to the library. Then he carefully sealed the original entrance with concrete, old bricks, and fresh flooring that matched the room above. If anyone searched beneath the library, they would find nothing. The real entrance was now hidden somewhere nobody ever checked. That was why the escape tunnel fooled everyone. Even when the prison searched for it, they were looking in the wrong place. Days passed. The prison slowly relaxed. The strange dirt was forgotten. The library reopened. Daniel returned to organizing books as if nothing had happened. Officer Cooper tried to move on, but the question stayed in his mind. Then another strange event happened. During the weekly inmate count, one prisoner answered for another. The mistake lasted only a few seconds before officers corrected it. Most people laughed about the confusion. Cooper did not. He wondered why someone would risk breaking such a simple rule. Later that afternoon, he reviewed security camera recordings. Hour after hour, he watched inmates walking through hallways. Everything appeared normal. Then, just before midnight on a recording from 3 nights earlier, he paused the video. A maintenance cart rolled past the library. Nothing unusual. Except, the cart looked unusually heavy. Its wheels sank slightly into the floor. 2 inmates pushed it instead of 1. The cart stopped for less than 30 seconds outside the old laundry room before continuing down the hallway. Cooper zoomed in. The video quality was poor. He could not clearly see who was pushing it. But one inmate appeared to have Daniel Brooks's build. The prison records showed no maintenance work scheduled there that night. Cooper printed the image. The next morning, he showed it to Warden Harris. The warden studied the picture. It could be anyone. It could, Cooper admitted. But why stop outside an abandoned laundry room? Harris thought for a moment. We'll inspect it tomorrow. Daniel overheard part of the conversation while shelving books. His hands froze for only a second. Tomorrow. They were finally looking in the right direction. That evening, Daniel quietly returned to his cell after dinner. His cellmate, Jason Miller, looked nervous. "They're getting close," Jason whispered. Daniel nodded. "I know. What do we do?" Daniel stayed calm. "We finish." Jason stared at him. "You're still going through with it?" Daniel looked toward the small prison window. "So much work can't be wasted now." Late that night, while most of the prison slept, Daniel slipped into the hidden tunnel entrance beneath the abandoned laundry room. The air felt colder than usual. He crawled deeper underground with a small flashlight. The tunnel stretched farther than ever before. Only one final section remained. Beyond it was an old storm drainage system outside the prison walls. Daniel picked up his digging tool. Each scrape echoed softly through the tunnel. Minutes passed. Then something unexpected happened. Cold air suddenly rushed across his face. He stopped digging. There was another space on the other side. His heart pounded. One more push. The dirt collapsed. A narrow opening appeared. Moonlight streamed into the tunnel. Daniel slowly crawled forward and looked outside. He was beyond the outer prison fence. For the first time in years, nothing stood between him and freedom. At sunrise, officers would inspect the abandoned laundry room. Daniel knew the secret would not stay hidden much longer. He had only one chance left. And before the sun came up, he disappeared into the darkness of the escape tunnel. Daniel Brooks crawled through the narrow tunnel as fast as he could. Cold air rushed past his face. For the first time in years, he could smell wet grass instead of concrete walls. He reached the tunnel's exit and slowly pushed aside a patch of bushes. He looked around. No fences. No guard towers. No flashing lights. Only a quiet stretch of woods behind Blackstone State Penitentiary. He had done it. The escape tunnel had fooled everyone. Daniel took one careful step outside. Then another. Within seconds, he disappeared into the trees. Behind him, the tunnel entrance looked almost impossible to find. It was hidden beneath thick bushes, fallen branches, and loose rocks. Anyone walking past would never notice it. Just before sunrise, Officer Ryan Cooper arrived early for work. Something had kept him awake all night. He walked straight to Warden Michael Harris. "We're checking the old laundry room now," Cooper said. The warden nodded. "I've already called maintenance." A small team gathered outside the abandoned room. The old door groaned as it opened. Dust covered the floor. Broken washing machines sat against the walls. Everything looked forgotten. Maintenance worker Ethan Walker shined his flashlight across the room. "I don't see anything." Neither did anyone else. Officer Cooper slowly walked around the room. He stopped beside an old metal shelf. Unlike everything else, the floor beneath it was almost clean. He bent down. Tiny scratches marked the concrete, as if something heavy had been moved many times. "Help me with this shelf," Cooper said. 2 officers grabbed it. The shelf slid only a few inches. Then everyone froze. A square piece of concrete sat beneath it. It had a small metal ring built into one corner. Officer Cooper pulled on the ring. The concrete cover lifted. A blast of cool air rushed upward. The officers stared into the darkness below. A tunnel. It was real. Warden Harris could hardly believe his eyes. "Call every unit," he shouted. "Lock down the prison." Within seconds, Alarms echoed through Blackstone. Red emergency lights flashed across every hallway. Steel doors slammed shut. Inmates were ordered back into their cells. Officers rushed through every building. Guard towers scanned the prison grounds. Search dogs arrived within minutes. Officer Cooper climbed carefully into the tunnel with 2 members of the emergency response team. The passage stretched farther than anyone expected. Wooden supports held up the ceiling. Small battery lights had been left behind. Empty food wrappers lined one side. Someone had spent months working underground. "This wasn't built in a week," one officer whispered. "No," Cooper replied. "This took patience." The team crawled deeper. After several minutes, Cooper noticed fresh footprints in the soft dirt. "They're recent." "How recent?" He touched one print. "The dirt is still loose." His face became serious. "He may still be inside." The officers continued moving forward. Every corner increased the tension. Every shadow looked dangerous. Finally, the tunnel split into 2 different paths. One path continued straight. The other turned sharply toward another section of the prison. Cooper frowned. Why build 2 tunnels? Nobody had an answer. The team followed the straight path first. After several more minutes, daylight appeared ahead. Cooper crawled out through the hidden exit outside the prison fence. He stood in silence. Daniel was gone. The woods stretched for miles. There were countless places to hide. Search teams spread across the area. Helicopters circled overhead. Roadblocks appeared on nearby highways. Police officers searched abandoned buildings, gas stations, and wooded trails. But Daniel Brooks had vanished. News of the escape spread across the country. Television stations interrupted regular programming. Experts called it one of the most carefully planned prison escapes in recent memory. People everywhere asked the same question. How had an escape tunnel this large remained hidden for so long? Inside Blackstone, investigators searched every inch of the tunnel. They measured it, photographed it, collected fingerprints, examined every tool left behind. Then one investigator found something strange. Near the tunnel split, hidden behind a loose wooden support, was a small notebook sealed inside a plastic bag. Officer Cooper carefully opened it. The first pages contained rough drawings of the tunnel. The next pages listed guard schedules. Then came detailed maps of the prison. But the final page made his heart race. Written in large block letters were just 8 words. This tunnel was never built for one escape. Cooper looked up at Warden Harris. What does that mean? No one answered. Just then, a correctional officer came running toward them, completely out of breath. Sir, what is it? Harris asked. The officer swallowed hard. We've completed another inmate count. And? The officer's face turned pale. Daniel Brooks isn't the only one who's missing. The room fell silent. If the count was correct, someone else had escaped through the tunnel. And nobody knew who it was. The room became completely silent. Officer Ryan Cooper looked at the latest inmate count again. Every number had been checked twice. Every housing unit had reported. One inmate was missing. Daniel Brooks. But another name had also disappeared. Jason Miller. The officers looked at each other in disbelief. No, Warden Michael Harris said. Search every cell again. Within minutes, officers searched the prison from top to bottom. Every cell was opened. Every hallway was checked. Every storage room was inspected. The result stayed the same. Jason Miller was gone. The tunnel had fooled everyone. Not just once. Twice. Investigators rushed back underground. They followed the second branch of the tunnel that had been ignored earlier. Unlike the main passage, this one curved beneath several old utility pipes before joining the first tunnel near the hidden exit. Officer Cooper shined his flashlight on the dirt. There are 2 different sets of footprints, he said. One set had larger boot prints. The other was slightly smaller. Both led toward the woods. There really were 2 escapees, another investigator said quietly. The search grew even larger. State police joined local officers. Search helicopters flew over the forests. Roads were blocked for miles around Blackstone State Penitentiary. Officers searched abandoned barns, empty cabins, and old warehouses. For 2 days, they found nothing. Then, on the third morning, a park ranger called the police. He had discovered an abandoned campsite deep in the woods. Officer Cooper arrived a short time later. There were 2 sleeping bags, 2 empty water bottles, a small campfire. But the camp had been left in a hurry. The investigators spread out. A tracking dog suddenly began barking. The dog followed a trail toward an old railroad bridge. Half a mile later, officers spotted someone hiding beneath the bridge. "Police! Don't move!" The man slowly stood up. It was Jason Miller. He looked exhausted. His clothes were muddy. He raised his hands without saying a word. After he was taken into custody, investigators asked him one question. "Where is Daniel Brooks?" Jason shook his head. "We split up after leaving the woods." "Why?" "It was his plan." Jason explained that Daniel had spent years designing the tunnel. Every detail had been carefully planned. The tunnel was dug a little at a time. Small amounts of dirt were hidden inside maintenance bags and mixed with construction debris. The entrance was moved after Daniel feared the library would be searched. Even the false clues had been planned to make investigators waste time. The tunnel wasn't just built to escape, Jason admitted. It was built to make everyone look in the wrong place. That was exactly what had happened. While officers searched beneath the library, the real entrance waited safely beneath the abandoned laundry room. The escape tunnel had fooled everyone. Days later, officers received a phone call from a truck stop nearly 200 miles away. A cashier recognized Daniel Brooks from the news. Police rushed to the area. Security cameras showed Daniel buying food and a map before leaving on foot. Search teams closed in. For nearly 6 hours, officers searched nearby fields and wooded trails. Finally, Officer Cooper spotted movement inside an abandoned farmhouse. He quietly called for backup. The building was surrounded. "Daniel Brooks!" Cooper shouted. "It's over. Come out with your hands where we can see them." Several tense seconds passed. Then the front door slowly opened. Daniel stepped outside. He looked tired. His clothes were dirty from days on the run. He looked around at the officers surrounding him. There was nowhere left to go. Without saying a word, he raised his hands. The escape was over. Back at Blackstone, investigators spent weeks studying the tunnel. They discovered hidden air vents, wooden supports, drainage channels, and carefully measured turns that avoided underground utility lines. Experts called it one of the most carefully planned escape tunnels they had ever examined. The prison immediately began major security changes. Old buildings were inspected. Ground sensors were installed. Maintenance areas were redesigned. Inspection procedures became much stricter. Officer Ryan Cooper received recognition for refusing to ignore the small clues that others dismissed. He often told new officers one lesson from the case. The biggest warning signs are sometimes the smallest ones. As for Daniel Brooks, he returned to prison under even tighter security. The tunnel that had taken years to build was filled with concrete from end to end. No one would ever crawl through it again. Even today, the story of Blackstone State Penitentiary is remembered for one incredible reason. It was not simply because 2 inmates escaped. It was because an escape tunnel hidden beneath one of America's most secure prisons fooled experienced officers, inspectors, and investigators for months before the truth was finally uncovered. And that is why the case became known as the escape tunnel that fooled everyone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy real crime stories, prison investigations, and shocking cases from around the world, make sure to follow Crime Crimythrax. Your support helps us bring you more in-depth crime documentaries, hidden stories, and investigations you won't want to miss. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Follow Crime Crimythrax and stay connected for the next true crime story.